and get around it. So America today stands up to close the loopholes. That is why this is a day of great triumph for the gun safety movement that has swept America
gun safety
in response
movement
to Parkland and Las Vegas and Newtown and the other massacres that our people have endured. Second, this legislation is perfectly constitutional. As Justice Scalia found for the Supreme Court in the DC versus Heller decision, the Second Amendment permits reasonable regulation to exclude from gun ownership violent felons, the mentally unstable, and so on. Despite all of the solemn invocations of the Second Amendment that we continue to hear bouncing off of the walls of Congress, the opponents of this legislation could not muster a single witness to actually argue that this legislation is unconstitutional. And that includes the George Mason University Antonin Scalia School of Law professor of constitutional law and the Second Amendment, who was brought in and just expressed her positive George Mason University bill without articulating any constitutional analysis at all, and rejected the opportunity to say that this legislation is unconstitutional. The reason 97% of Americans favor this legislation is because it is perfectly
97%.
with the letter and spirit of the Second Amendment, and it sweepingly advances public safety at the same time. This bill finally will dramatically lower gun violence in America. More than 90% of Brady background checks take less than 90 seconds to complete. But these checks have literally stopped more than 3 million illegal gun purchases by felons and fugitives and domestic, violently, mentally ill, undocumented aliens, and so on. Every day,
except that they wouldn't accept any amendments to require that be reported to
abusers from purchasing a gun. Imagine how much more effective this system will be when we close these gaping loopholes. And yet, even in the face of the shocking death toll, which distinguishes our society from the other wealthy societies on Earth, despite
that's all that matters is wealthy societies.
Legislation, and despite its clear constitutionality, our friends across the aisle oppose closing the internet, the gun show, and the private sale loophole. Instead of getting on our side to close the loopholes, what do they give us? More loopholes. They brought us dozens of amendments to try to suggest more loopholes to the current law. That's obviously not the direction that America needs to go in, and you'll hear some more about that today. They have given us a veritable loophole factory, but now is the time to
loophole factory,
not reproduce them. Let's focus on the public safety, which is the cardinal purpose of law and the social contract in a democratic society. Let's pass this excellent bill, and let's pass H.R. 1112.
This excellent bill. Let's pass it. It's excellent.
Which closes
the internet loophole is the suggestion
loophole that made it possible for a guy to go out and get a gun because the dealer decided to give him a gun after 3 days because they were still doing a background check. And this loophole says if it's taken 3 days or more, then you have a right to go ahead and get your gun. We're going to close that one, this so-called default proceed provision. We're going to close that one too, so that we don't see any repeat massacres like the one that took place in June of 2015 at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. I will, at this point, reserve the balance of my time, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Maryland reserves the balance of his time. Gentlewoman from Arizona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank Mr. Raskin for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All of us, Republicans and Democrats, want to reduce gun violence. I think there's just a difference of opinion on how we get there. Unfortunately, H.R. 8 and H.R. 1112, although well-intentioned, will not reduce gun violence, as Mr. Raskin said. And instead, it will turn everyday, law-abiding individuals into criminals.
Somebody better get in here and chat with me, or they're going to copyright me and I'll lose this channel.
You know, I grew up in
Thanks
a
to our
family
Patreons
that
for
didn't have guns.
letting me buy things
After
like
my dad returned from World War II, he stopped hunting.
Hillary don't own it.
And so because I wasn't
started it.
around him, I have to admit I had an irrational fear of guns for a while. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I got educated. I remember I first went to a debate where the person that was talking for gun rights said, you know, who follows the laws? Law-abiding people follow the laws. Who doesn't follow the laws? Criminals do not follow the laws. So although well-intentioned, often laws are unenforceable and criminals just do not follow them. Again, I believe is well-intended. And 20. I'm in the alone. Recent attackers around checks took firearm. The attackers at the California, the trio synagogue.
What happened? Am I still online?
That is already illegal. It has been illegal since the 1960s. Adam Lanza, the attacker in the Sandy Elementary School, Newtown, Connecticut shooting, used his mother's firearms, which were legally purchased by his mother. So as you can see, and each one of them listed how the attackers got their guns. HR 8 and HR 1112 would not have prevented any of these shootings.
None.
Not only
The
would
ones
none
that they
of the mass
reference.
shootings be prevented by HR 8 and HR 1112, but the Department of Justice under President Obama said that in order for universal background checks to actually work and be enforceable, a federal gun registry is needed. Yet this legislation in HR 8 specifically prohibits a registry. Thus, again, it is unenforceable. The fact is, criminals don't get their guns legally and will not go through a background check to get their guns, even if this bill was signed into law. A recent Department of Justice report of prison inmates that use guns in their crimes showed that 56% obtained their guns illegally and another 25% received them from family members, which, by the way, family members are still allowed to get the guns under this law. It is obvious then that they did not get their guns from a gun show or private sales, as Mr. Raskin is concerned about. HR 8 will also turn everyday law-abiding citizens into criminals if it becomes law. Let's look at the amendments that were rejected by the Democrats in Rules Committee and in judiciaries that offered to protect law-abiding citizens from becoming criminals. First, there was an amendment, I thought common sense, that someone thinking of committing suicide would be exempted from temporarily turning over their gun to a friend, and it's not allowed under this bill.
Nope.
They would become a criminal. So somebody that wants to commit suicide could not transfer their gun.
And they can't even consider it under this.
If a law-abiding citizen wanted to let someone temporarily use their gun on their own property, they would become a criminal under this bill. If a farmer or rancher wanted to temporarily lend a gun to a ranch hand for the purposes of ranch activities, the farmer would become a criminal under this law. If a domestic violence victim was in fear of her life and wanted to temporarily borrow a gun from a friend to protect herself, she would become a criminal under this law. Let's also look at some common sense amendments rejected by the Democrats that would have prevented undue burdens and duplication on law-abiding citizens that have already passed a background check, but now have to go through another background check under this law. People who have security clearances. This is the application to get a government security clearance. Page upon page, background check, extensive background check. Yet someone who has this and has gone through this still has to get another background check. People who have a concealed carry weapon issued by a state, they have to go through another background check. People who have already gotten a gun permit from states that require them, they have to go through another background check. People who have global entry, who have gone through a background check, they've got to do it again under this bill. Even law enforcement officers have to go through another background check under this bill. This is placing undue burden on law-abiding citizens. Now, I want to share testimony from a young woman in the Judiciary Committee. This woman was a victim of rape on her college campus. The reason I'm bringing it up is because well-meaning gun control laws actually prevented her from carrying a gun to school because the state she traveled through did not allow her to carry a gun in order to defend herself. This is a clear example of how law-abiding citizens, not criminals, law-abiding citizens who follow the law, and how this young woman and others like her was actually harmed by well-intentioned gun control laws. As a survivor of domestic violence, I know all too well how hard it can be to protect oneself or find a lifeline out. Your abuser, my abuser, often controlled all my finances. I wouldn't have been able to pay for a background check or a gun. Sometimes getting a gun from a friend could actually be your only option. Yet, unfortunately, under this bill, I tried to offer an amendment, but it was rejected.
And dismissed as
Now let's turn to HR 1112.
as a loophole.
Which changes the length of time that a background check has to be completed from the current 3 days to 10 business days, and then another 10 business days for an appeal. So it could be 20 plus days. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I want to tell you a story, a real story of Carol Bone. She was a New Jersey woman who was stabbed to death while waiting to be approved for her firearm application. She already had an order of protection through the courts, but that wasn't enough. She needed more than just that piece of paper. HR 1112 will make the realities of Carol's story happen across the country, putting millions of women and law-abiding citizens in danger. Women who seek avenues of protection will be forced to wait almost a month, 20 days to a month like Carol. How many women will potentially suffer like Carol? HR 8 also has other problems. Unfortunately, the debate at Judiciary Committee was cut short. Many common sense amendments were not even heard. Only 10 amendments out of 100 were heard before the chairman cut off debate. Because of the rush to get this bill through, there's another problem. There's vague language that is not defined and thus is open to interpretation. And so I know in some of the amendments, the majority party has tried to give an alternative to my good common sense domestic violence amendments, but it doesn't do any good. And this is the reason. It's because the language is so vague. It says Under HR 8, a person is allowed to temporarily transfer a firearm if it is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm. The question is, there's no definition of this. So how long is temporary transfer? Who determines that? Does the victim determine it? Who determines if there is imminent death? Does it qualify if a victim of domestic violence thinks they will be killed? Or does the person transferring the gun have to be in the same room and there be some kind of shootout and they throw a gun to them? What does imminent danger and imminent death mean? With something as important as the Second Amendment, I think we owe it to the American people to do our work and take as long as we have to in order to have a fair and open debate on major pieces of legislation. With that, I urge opposition to the rule, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman from Arizona reserves the balance of time. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The first thing I'd like to do is to submit for the record a statement by the National Task Force to End Sexual and Domestic Violence, which is in favor of this legislation and against any weakening amendments. And just to quote a small part of it, firearms pose a significant danger to victims of domestic violence, and this is true no matter who owns the firearm. Research shows that a male abuser's access to a firearm increases the risk of intimate partner femicide fivefold and does not support the contention that firearm possession is a protective factor for the victim. And so there's more in here of interest, but I'd like to—
without objection.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank my distinguished colleague from Arizona for her thoughts on the question of sexual and domestic violence. We indeed have a provision within the legislation which allows for an exemption from the background check requirement in cases of an imminent threat of great bodily harm. The question has been raised, does that include sexual assault, dating partner violence, stalking, and so on? We thought it was self-evident that it did, but in any event, Representatives Horn and from Oklahoma and Murphy from Florida are introducing a clarifying amendment to be very specific that it's included. So at that point, perhaps we could welcome the support of the distinguished gentlewoman from Arizona, because we're being very clear at that point that our exception for imminent bodily harm and violence includes sexual assault and so on. And I'm certain that your intentions are good, just as are the intentions of the authors of the amendment in the bill. But let me just address, in case
the
you
road
haven't
to hell is
decided to come
paved
over
with
to
good
our side
intentions.
now,
I've heard that before.
Address some of the general points that were made against the legislation. The gentle lady articulated an argument we've been hearing a lot of from our counterparts, which is that criminals don't follow the law, and therefore there's no reason to get rid of the loopholes and strengthen the law because criminals won't follow the law. Now, the fallacy of that argument is plain to see. It's an argument against all law. It's an argument against the law against murder, because murderers obviously don't follow the law against murder. It's an argument against the law opposed to theft, because thieves don't follow the law against theft. But I think anyone who takes time to really study what law is understands that the purpose of the law is to deter people from negative, socially harmful action. The way that the Brady Act has deterred more than 3 million people, felons and fugitives and the mentally unstable and other unauthorized categories,
They
from
seriously think that
weapon.
if you can't get it at
Now,
an FFL, you've decided to not do evil.
Sweeps so broadly that it's an argument against having the Brady Act that we have now, and perhaps that's the intention, simply to take down the law that we've got now. The other purpose of law, of course, is to punish people who violate it, and then again to send a moral message about what the social norms are. And we've got social norms about driving, for example. Would we say we're not going to have driver's licenses in America because people who drive without a driver's license ignore the law requiring you to have a driver's license? It's a completely nonsensical argument. Let's come back to reality and talk about what the Brady Act actually requires the gun dealers to ask people. Here are the basic questions that are being asked. Are you under indictment for, or have you ever been convicted of a felony? Are you a fugitive from justice? Are you an unlawful user of a controlled substance? Do you suffer from mental illness? Have you been dishonorably discharged from the armed forces? Are you subject to a court order restraining you from harassing, stalking, or threatening your child or an intimate partner? Have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence? Have you renounced your United States citizenship? Are you unlawfully present in the United States? Those questions have created a dragnet that has allowed us to stop more than 3 million people from getting weapons who shouldn't have them. But there are these big gaping loopholes out there that they can go on the internet and get one, or they can go to the parking lot of a convenience store in a private sale and get one, or they can go to a gun show and negotiate a private sale and get one without having to answer those questions. Well, the American people have spoken on this.
Where?
That's really why
Where?
This is the first legislation advocating gun safety to hit the floor of the House of Representatives in a quarter of a century. This is a great day for the gun safety movement that has overtaken America, rejecting the unconscionable toll of 100 people dead every single day in communities across the land. With that, I'm going to yield to Mr. Thompson, the sponsor of the underlying bill, H.R. 8, who's done such a magnificent job advocating this cause through thick and thin.
60 of the 100 is suicide. Let's remember that.
Yep.
We yield for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from
And
California.
22 of
recognized
those
for
are
2 minutes.
veterans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise
Yeah, and then the rest are pretty much gang on gang.
fine legislation.
Well, the rest are in 5
bipartisan
counties.
measure that will make all of our communities safer and will save lives. I'd like to thank Chairman McGovern for his fair consideration of H.R. 8 and the proposed amendments that came
I just think
before
it's
the rules
incredibly ballsy of them to even claim that this will save lives.
Committee. Over 80% of Americans have come together to support universal background checks.
Where? When?
This is a new day.
Where?
And this is a time to act now.
And why don't they ever have the
Since
same
tragedy
statistic?
in Newtown about 6.5 years ago, this
78% of statistics are made up on the spot.
moments of silence, but we have not held one moment of action. With Speaker Pelosi's leadership, we now have a chance to vote for two bipartisan bills which will help save lives. As a gun owner and a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, I was proud to introduce H.R. 8 with my bipartisan colleagues. I look forward to its consideration tomorrow, and I urge my colleagues to support this rule today and the bill tomorrow, and I yield back the balance of my time. Gentleman from California, balance of his time. Gentleman from Maryland reserves the balance of his time. Gentlewoman from Arizona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 5 minutes to my good friend, the representative from North Carolina, Mr. Hudson.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to voice my strong opposition to H.R. 8 and H.R. 1112. We all share the same goal to end gun violence. But in the course of this debate, House Democrats say they want to do something to end gun violence. And anyone who disagrees with their policies doesn't care. I believe in my heart that the gentleman from Maryland and the folks on the other side of this debate care about the victims of gun violence and the children in this country. And I know in my heart that my colleagues on this side of the aisle and I care too. It's a shame that in their rush to do something, anything, Democrats have made this a partisan show. They won't even allow my bipartisan concealed carry reciprocity bill that passed this House last Congress to be debated on the House floor today. What about the single mother victim of assault, like Shaneen Allen? Does she not have the right to defend herself? Instead of working on common sense solutions that can actually help prevent tragedies, like supporting local law enforcement, ensuring laws and protocols are followed, improving mental health, and implementing my concealed carry reciprocity, they're targeting law-abiding citizens. And they're disregarding existing federal law. There is no gun show loophole. Federal law already requires a background check on every commercial gun purchase in America, no matter where it takes place. Federal law already prohibits so-called straw purchases. Let's make one thing clear. H.R. 8 would not have stopped Newtown. H.R. 8 would not have stopped Parkland. It would not have stopped Las Vegas or Sutherland Springs or San Bernardino or the tragic attack on our former colleague, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords.
Howdy, Patriot.
But the proponents of gun control don't want you to judge them based on outcomes. They want you to judge them based on intentions.
Yep.
And they say anyone who points out the facts, anyone who dares observe the obvious flaws in their legislation,
Love it.
do so because they don't care.
I like this guy.
If they're
That
rushed
was
to
well
do
said.
something, House Democrats ignore that House Republicans have done many things, like strengthening the background check system, which would have prevented Sutherland Springs, improving mental health care, which would have prevented many of these shootings, such as Newtown and Charleston and Parkland, and giving schools the tools they need to protect students. All these bills received bipartisan support in the last Congress, but we don't get credit for real action because they say our intentions weren't good enough. We owe it to the American people to look past the intention and the emotion and focus like a laser on outcomes. What can we do to actually end gun violence once and for all? What is this bill actually going to do? It's going to turn a law-abiding American into a criminal when you loan your shotgun to your buddy to go dove hunting. It's going to make it illegal for a victim of stalking to borrow a gun from a neighbor for protection.
This guy's from North Carolina,
It's going to make the
Patriot.
cost of background checks so expensive that the average American can't afford to buy a gun. Meanwhile, criminals are going to continue to get their firearms, whether it's through theft or the black market or on the street. I applaud President Donald Trump for standing with us against this ineffective legislation, and I encourage my colleagues to vote no. The American people want us to work together to solve this problem and stop gun violence. Can't we come together in a bipartisan way and not just do something, but do something that will actually make a difference? I'm calling on my colleagues to put partisanship aside, work together on ideas that will actually make a difference. I stand ready to continue this work. I work with anyone to end gun violence while also protecting the rights of law-abiding citizens, and I reject the false dilemma that we can't do both. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from North Carolina yields the balance of time. Gentlewoman from Arizona reserves the balance of her time. Gentleman from Maryland is now recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I suppose that we are in a rush to do anything, something, anything that works in order to curb the terrible toll of gun violence in our society. Oh, in the last Congress, it's true, there was other legislation that was brought to us.
This
One
is
was
Jamie
a
Raskin.
proposal to legalize silencers in America.
Legalize silencers.
More like
Wow.
of organized crime than it is.
Oh, what a fucking asshole. Did you
US
just hear what he
Congress
called
trying to see
every
public safety.
suppressor owner
But
and
there
everyone
was
who's
this
interested in
bipartisan
owning
Concealed
one?
Carry Reciprocity Act,
What
which
malice.
was a massive assault on
What
federalism and
ignorance.
states' rights. It would have destroyed every state's concealed carry law in the country to level it at the lowest common denominator. So if you could get a license to
See
carry
how
a
they
concealed
interpret
loaded weapon
national
in one
reciprocity?
state, and in some states there are more than 1 million people who've been able to get them through completely permissive and lax laws, then you could go anywhere in the country. That's their proposal.
That's not what it said. This guy's completely lying about what national reciprocity is.
Assure my friend that
It's not a national license to carry.
If you read it carefully, which says that you can temporarily transfer a gun at a shooting range, at a shooting gallery, or for purposes of
A
hunting.
shooting
So you don't have to
range, a
worry
shooting
about this.
gallery. What the
Our
hell is a
friends,
shooting gallery?
Are
What
either
is
not
this
reading
guy's
carefully enough, or they're
impression of
overlooking
what we
very
do?
clear passages in our legislation which deal with common sense concerns. This is bipartisan legislation.
I feel like I'm a
It's
big enough
backed by
channel.
more
I
than
should
90%
soft pedal
of the
this.
American
Should I shut
people,
this down?
and it's gonna advance
Should we soft
common
pedal?
safety. So rather than searching for mysterious
I'm afraid
reasons
I'm
to
yelling at
oppose
the
it,
people
why
who
shouldn't
agree with us.
everybody get together to say this is something that will promote
I
public
hope that
safety?
anybody that's
With that,
watching
I
this
yield 1
would
minute to the
consider
gentlewoman from
slicing
Florida,
some of
Ms.
these
Cassidy.
little pieces
Sir,
of these
from
excerpts
Florida is
and
recognized
focus
for
on
1 minute.
the validity or the
I
what
thank
they
Mr. Raskin of the Rules Committee
the
for
points
yielding the
that they-
time. I rise in strong support of this rule in H.R. 8, the Bipartisan Background Checks Act. Proud to be a co-sponsor, and I thank Congressman Thompson for his leadership. Our bill is
Oh, sorry,
intended
she farted.
to ensure that individuals
Excuse her.
who are prohibited from owning a firearm are not able to possess one. Rep. Raskin is right. America is in the midst of a gun violence emergency. Here.
It's an emergency? Oh my God.
Wrong.
You just call it, oh, they have to say emergency because if Trump gets the wall via an emergency, then it's their next step is to make guns an emergency.
our
They
children.
have to start putting that
No
out there.
other country in the world suffers the ravages.
No other country in the world.
Have you been to Venezuela lately? Just
been to
saying.
Mexico? Have you been to Mexico?
Because we're going to finally pass legislation.
You've
here
got
today.
millions of people in Venezuela that are slaughtered because of the dictator there, but that doesn't count.
People are being gunned down
Military
in
assault
churches,
rifles are deadlier than
schools,
ever.
Movie theaters, nightclubs, and synagogues. For so many years, the Republican-led Congress blocked action on common sense gun safety laws. But finally, to the American people, we heard you.
Isn't that kind of the point of a military assault rifle?
Correct.
I mean, are we supposed to be going backwards with technology
build the
for
rules
military?
for the safety of our communities and our families.
Yeah, get the fuck out.
Safety over security deserves neither. She didn't add anything of substance. She simply regurgitated.
She got in front of a camera so her constituents can see her.
Thank you,
She
Mr.
regurgitated
Speaker. I'd like
talking
to address
points.
a couple things that were said previously.
Now she's going to get
I
schooled.
had sponsored an amendment as a survivor of domestic violence to allow victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse who have orders of protection to be able to get transferred a gun if, they might be in fear of their life. And as I've said, often victims of domestic violence don't have the financial means, or they're so restricted by their perpetrator that it's difficult for them to go out and purchase a gun, let alone get a background check. And so they might have a friend that they can borrow it from.
Not anymore.
Now, in response, I think Mr. Raskin, if I'm not mistaken, said that the Democrats did help domestic violence victims. And, I just don't think that their amendment cuts it. And I'm going to read the amendment if this is the one that you're talking about, Mr. Raskin. It says a temporary transfer that is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm if the possession by the transferee lasts only as long as immediately necessary to prevent the imminent death or great bodily harm. And then here's the amendment, including the harm of domestic violence, dating partner violence, sexual assault, stalking, and domestic abuse. And I would say just because you add the words domestic violence, domestic victims of domestic abuse, doesn't mean this is going to help. And the reason is simply because of what I said before, is that these terms in here are really unclear. And I really would like somebody to explain, they're not defined anywhere. Who determines prevent imminent death or great bodily harm? And so let's say I am a victim of domestic violence and I think, my perpetrator is going to kill me. Does imminent death and in this word say last only as long as immediately necessary to prevent the imminent death? So does that mean the person that my friend who can lend me a gun and, has to be right there in the same room and see that there's imminent death coming? I mean, there is no definition here. And so it's unclear to me that this would help at all. Also, what is the definition of temporary transfer? How long is that? How long is temporary transfer? Does that mean, just enough time you can throw somebody a gun while they're imminently in death? I mean, you have to be right there. What does this mean? There's no definition. So if we're going to proceed with this, I think that we should at least define what these terms mean. And therefore, I really wish that my amendment that said that victims of domestic violence or sexual abuse that have an order of protection through the court, would be allowed to at least borrow a gun to defend themselves from maybe a friend. And so with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman from Arizona restores the balance of her time. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
What?
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I want to thank my colleague for advancing our discussion here, because I think now we're really starting to get somewhere. The gentlewoman suggested an amendment which allows for the transfer of a firearm to a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault who has an order of protection issued by a court. That's an extremely narrow exception. Most women who are enduring domestic violence don't have a civil protection order. Part of that.
How do I get this thing that goes smaller? What?
A gun by a family member or be loaned a gun by a friend until the
My problem with all this line of stuff is that it deals with the individual, the individual situations when you remove the ability of a victim of abuse to have or to possess a firearm, or you make it very difficult for them to be able to possess a firearm. You create what am I trying to say? Like a situation where abuse is more possible, and someone doesn't have to consider lethal consequences to be an abuser. So they're going to focus on a specific individual, and it's easy for these people who don't understand or don't have any interest in personal what's the word? Trying to keep themselves alive. They have no interest in that. They don't understand that. They've never been a victim. Then they're not gonna to emphasize with someone who's actually a victim. So instead of trying to bring up individual scenarios, I'd suggest that by removing any victim's ability to have lethal consequences from a small or a frail or a sick or injured victim to any attacker, that's what creates a situation where you have more attackers, and they can come at you simply with their bulk or their size or a piece of wood or a broken bottle, and you have more victimhood and you have more violence in general. And no one's really successfully arguing that. They're bringing up these specific instances, and I suspect most of these antis who think it just saves one, then they're not worried about that. They're willing to sacrifice for their ideals, right? Because they don't have morals.
What gets me is that they want to pass a law, but then even the ones that want to pass the law want to throw in all of these exceptions, right? They want to talk about exceptions to this law. Well, if you're going to have a bunch of exceptions to a law, then what's the point of having the law in the first place? It kind of makes that move.
To show your constituents for election that they actually try to do
No, I mean, I get it. That was rhetorical, but yeah.
I know that.
They refused all the exceptions yesterday. So the only exceptions they allow are from their side, which are clarifications. Nothing fundamentally changes anything. It simply clarifies in their minds to concede to some of the points from the other side, like that, where they said, well, we're not going to change any of the actual wording about the situation. We're just going to add domestic victim in there. So that's how they amended it. They didn't amend anything. They clarified. So but I guess the idea is that if they're going to not allow edits to this, then why are they doing this in the first place, which simply edits the original one?
Mr. Raskin said that
By law, they have to give an hour of debate to the floor before it goes to the floor. So this is actually an absolute, just a moot point here.
Well, no, what this is doing, if you watched yesterday and then today, what this is an extract of what happened yesterday, and I suspect an extract from the last two subcommittee meetings. So these are the key players from the subcommittees coming up and telling, and look at all the empty seats. They're telling whoever happens to be here, who isn't proxy voting, of what the consequences were, or what the results were of those committee meetings. And they're, the Republicans, I guess, the pro-freedom side on this particular one are trying to summarize in an extract or summary of what all their points were yesterday. They haven't brought up ranches yet. They just barely did. But that's, I suppose, what they're trying to do here. But there's a certain amount of lockstep going to happen. But at least the people who are interested can see this, and then it's in the record. But again, it's also letting us see, as people who are interested and active, where the gaps are, where there's weaknesses. I see a couple of things that I think they could add to the national debate, because this, again, it's very focused on these certain things. And for example, when they talk about how dangerous or how much crime there is with firearms in the United States, it's never challenged that that's all within 5 counties. If you remove those 5 counties, we're actually one of the safest countries, period, and safest countries with firearms by far. And that's because we are a culture that's familiar with firearms, and our crimes and our accidents and our unintentional deaths are going down dramatically because we are comfortable with them. We're familiar with them. So they're not, as Republicans or as people that are pro-freedom, they're not focusing on that. They're allowing them to suggest that we're a violent country. And we're not. We are 5 violent counties in a country of 360 very peaceful people. And these laws, I think they are successfully attacking the idea that these laws only infringe on law-abiding people that are already obeying laws. And the crumbs that these additional infringements would actually encompass, the little crumbs that it would pick up, are 100% rural and 100%, or at least 90% or very high percentage people who are already obliging by all laws. To suggest that laws that are not being obeyed now are going to be necessary because we need those for more criminal, whatever, like is this against criminals? It's ridiculous. But I'm talking over her now.
I would say that there are some, in my disagreements with some of your statements. I also want to point out that there are many things that we can do on a bipartisan basis. And this obviously is not bipartisan, but I am the co-chairwoman of the Women's Caucus in Congress, and I have talked to my counterpart, who's a very nice woman and congresswoman, and we really do want to work on bipartisan solutions to gun violence. And I would say one of those is let's really concentrate on mental health issues. Now, we have done some things in the past. We did a Fix NICS Act, which we passed last year on a bipartisan basis, which really is an attempt to fix the national background system so that local jurisdictions actually report when there's problems, which I think is very valuable. We also did legislation in a bipartisan manner that would protect our schools more. And here's another thing we could do in a bipartisan manner. We, as you've noted, there was 3.5 million people have been stopped by NICS since 1994 from getting guns.
1994, 3 million.
Were stopped just last year.
Come on.
But you know what? Only 12 of those 112,000 were actually prosecuted. Why?
Because it's traffic incidents. It's things that are removed from people's records. It's ridiculous.
So I think that's another thing we can do on a bipartisan basis. And again, this bill, I believe, does more harm than good. And I do think my colleagues are well-intentioned. I do believe that all of us, evil. Whether we're Republican or Democrat, want to reduce gun violence. And I reserve the rest of my time.
Gentleman from Arizona reserves the balance.
I guess she's the only resistance to these guys.
Mr. Speaker,
the guy from North Carolina, obviously.
This is bipartisan legislation. We have
5 Republicans.
At least 5 Republicans who are co-sponsoring and supporting this legislation.
What does it mean, at least 5? There are 5.
Need to read those 5 Republican members of the House of Representatives out of her caucus. I'm not quite sure what happened in Maine, but I know that there
North
are
Carolina,
around a dozen states in the District of Columbia which have already
Florida, Pennsylvania, New Jersey.
In this federal legislation, my friend also invokes Second Amendment rights. I thought that we had put that red herring to rest in 2008.
The red herring. Holy
Oh, asshole.
Reasonable
regulations. Wow. Arrogant prick. Holy shit. You're hearing it right now.
The Second Amendment. So everybody on both sides of the aisle favors the Second Amendment along with the rest of the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, the red herring is every one of these guys just wants to get reelected, and that's the bottom line.
Like anybody's made a constitutional argument, because nobody has made a constitutional argument. Finally, on the question of the Domestic Violence Amendment, I would invite my friend to come on over, and we would gladly have unanimous consent to have her added to the amendment, which is the broader amendment she's talking about. Of course, her amendment was the narrow one, which required you to have a civil protection order before there would be an exception from the provisions of the legislation. She said she was misdirected by the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. All I can say is the legislative process is a treacherous place and a rocky road, especially for people in the minority. I've been dealing
That's
with
politician for all we do is fucking lie, so you can't get anything done.
I would make that offer to my friend. In the meantime, I yield 2.5 minutes to the gentleman from
The
Massachusetts.
legislative
Great and
is a
distinguished-
treacherous thing. Is it?
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Is legislating treacherous? Holy cow.
Thank the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin, for yielding me the time. I want to thank him for his leadership on this important issue. And let me remind my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who are opposing this legislation that people are watching this debate. And I know many are scratching their heads, wondering
You
what's
think?
going on. Because what we're trying to do here is close loopholes that allow violent criminals to get access to guns, not create more loopholes.
What loopholes are you talking about? That's what I want to know.
Ain't any loopholes.
High School in Worcester.
They know that.
Those young people demanded action on gun violence, not unlike other young people all across my district and all across this country. They are terrified, and they are tired of seeing one massacre after another.
Is anybody here terrified? I'm not.
I am
I'm
not terrified.
I go out every day, and I'm very happy, and it's a wonderful country we live in. I'm not terrified.
On their side, not on the side of the gun lobby. In fact, most gun owners agree with what we're doing here today.
There's 600.
No, we don't.
656 people watching it on
universal
YouTube.
background checks. 97%. You just don't see that support. You don't see support like that on.
Where does
very
he get
many
this
things. So on this issue,
97%?
The public is speaking loud and clear.
Yeah, 97% of his constituents.
97% of the Democrats in Congress.
Year after year after year. And I've heard from loved ones of victims killed and from those injured. I know many of my colleagues can say the same thing. It's heartbreaking. And each of us is in a unique position. We can do more than just listen. We can act. We can actually vote to help save lives. Now, sadly, past majorities have turned a deaf ear. In fact, it has been nearly a decade since the Judiciary Committee held a hearing on a major bill to combat gun violence. When they were in charge, my Republican friends on the other side held a hearing instead on a bill that would have actually brought more guns from out of state into local communities. Their indifference on this issue of gun violence, their silence has been stunning. But this majority is not satisfied with inaction. We will not be cowed by the gun lobby. We are moving legislation in the case of H.R. 8.
Right there, they're even saying lying background checks right there.
Time for inaction is over.
And the Supreme Court is going to say, you dumbass, you can't do that.
Gun violence is the norm. They want and they deserve better. You know, last night in the Rules Committee, my Republican friends tried to pass exception after exception after exception. May I ask for another 30 seconds?
Exception after exception for domestic abuse, for people that actually use.
Well, it's still got to get through the Senate, which I don't know that it can. And then
And it
even
still
if,
has to get signed.
and even if it does that, it's got to get signed. And say what you will about Trump, who knows? We know how he is, but hasn't he already said he's already said he wasn't going to sign it?
Ones were killed in gun violence. We are tired.
And they don't have 2/3 majority to override.
They do not.
It doesn't pass. This majority is going to be run.
But they got to put on the show, and this is what's interesting, is because when they put on the show, you get to see behind the curtain.
These bills. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle
You get to see the true evil.
and vote for the underlying legislation.
Well, when they put on the show, I mean, that's for their constituents. All they care about is getting reelected. They don't care about any of that other stuff.
I reserve the balance of my time.
They want the power and the prestige and the paycheck. That's what it's all about.
Hey, G, you watched the committee hearings. They said earlier that there wasn't really anybody against this bill that testified in the committee hearings. Was that true?
All the Republicans were against it.
Yeah, there was like.
That's not what I asked. I asked about testifying.
Yeah, there was definitely the ranchers, the lady from Arizona who testified.
Allowed to purchase a gun are no longer able to
I can't
purchase
turn her
a
down
gun.
easily.
Since 2014, nearly 400 of my constituents
Now I can.
have died by gun violence. Our community feels their loss every single day. Here are just a few of their names and tragic stories. Davon Ellis. Davon was the star.
Here we go with the violin playing in the background.
So the they had a table and they had like the what they call it, whether all the Congress people are in a line, right? And like whatever, like a committee line or whatever, at a long table with the chair guy in the center, I guess, rubbing his face the whole time. And then they had this table, and they kept bringing up people like her who would bring up all kinds of exploiting victims, and then they would have people who were trying to suggest why this was more of an infringement. And yeah, he's just, I guess if he said that they didn't have any, then he was wrong, because that was not correct. There was definitely people against it.
And they also denied Steve Scalise from testifying.
And
he's one of the ones that got shot in the baseball.
He got shot. Yeah,
he was one of the senators that get shot by a Bernie supporter.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He's actually in support of defending against this stuff.
But they wouldn't allow him to
testify because he would have been too big of a deterrent to what they were trying to do.
So in the center text thing, we've got the chat coming from the YouTube, which has about 700 people watching, and then we've got the chat on the right is our YouTube chat, which has 60 something people watching.
The YouTube side doesn't seem that happy either.
Well, it never does. If you watch anything live, and I mean I've watched a lot of stuff. You watch Ben Shapiro, or you watch Crowder, or you watch any of those guys when they do lives, or you watch presidential debates, or you watch a lot of the CNN or a lot of the C-SPAN, I should say, not CNN, C-SPAN stuff or whatever that goes live. What's crazy is the vast majority of the stuff in the side chat is all pro-freedom, whatever the topic is all pro-freedom. I'm not going to pigeonhole it into saying it's pro-2A because it depends on the conversation. But then when it comes down to it, this is where I got beef, is getting those people from griping and complaining into the chats to actually doing something is the issue, because you see the potential there, and it's aggravating. You're like, my God, there's, some of these lives that you watch have tens of thousands of people, and the chat's just steadily scrolling, and this is BS, and we don't support this, and they're lying, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, where are you, when it's time to vote? Where are you when it's, time to go rally, or time to send letters in or emails to your Congress people? Where are you other than just in the chats complaining?
Well, keep in mind that if you can put something out there and reach 10% or even 5% of a large audience, then that's useful. And at least we have a way to keep our finger on the pulse to some extent of people's opinion in this format. Of course, it's filtered by whoever's online and actually willing to type something.
It does not, will not be carried out and will not be effective.
I think we missed some good stuff because she usually has good stuff.
I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment in the record along with the extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, in closing, we all want to solve gun violence in the United States.
Violence.
But H.R. 1112
How come they only want to stop gun violence?
As co-chairwoman of the Bipartisan Women's Caucus,
because according to the Democrats, only gun violence is the problem.
We can all agree on. However, this is not one of them. We can talk about mental health. We can talk about strengthening the NICS background check system even more. We can talk about enforcing the laws that are already on the books. H.R. 8 will turn law-abiding citizens into criminals by making everyday gun transfers a crime and putting those that seek to protect themselves in jail for wanting to do so. H.R. 8 and H.R. 1112 will place an undue burden on citizens who already have a background check. For instance, security clearance, global entry, state-issued permits, etc. These pieces of legislation put law-abiding citizens in danger by disarming them and emboldening criminals. The bad guys never follow the laws. And in fact, I believe that this legislation violates the Second Amendment of the Constitution because it does not prohibit undue fees for this background checks.
Thank you.
One cannot afford them and thus not be able to get a gun to defend themselves. Mr. Speaker, I urge no on the previous question, no on the underlying measure, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Oh, she yielded back her time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Speaker, thank
Must
you very
be
much.
The debate
Far
must be
from
over at
trying
least.
to turn law-abiding citizens into criminals, our legislation will save law-abiding citizens from criminals simply by extending the successful Brady Law, which has been.
You're going to save law-abiding criminals from criminals who, by definition, do not abide by the law.
Saying that the legislation is unconstitutional because there may be undue fees imposed. Of course, those are the fees that are currently imposed under the Brady Law. So I'm afraid that my friend has just made an argument for the unconstitutionality of the current law, which has saved us from more than 3 million felons, fugitives, mentally unstable people.
So I'm
drug
hoping
abusers,
somebody
and
will take the
undocumented
challenge
aliens
to
from
challenge
acquiring
that
firearms, in the
staff that
country.
he
Mr.
keeps
Speaker,
relying on.
our country is a social contract. I know we got a lot of young people here today. We are a social contract, and if you go back and read,
What is it, about 20 people there altogether?
Thomas Hobbes, John
In that
Locke,
room, it's tough to
Thomas
say.
Jefferson, any of them say we leave a state of nature, which is a state of war, which is a state of war and a state of violence, in order to live in a civilized way. But how civilized is it when tens of thousands of Americans every year are being killed in firearm violence every day?
2/3 of suicide.
Another 100 Americans are killed with guns.
2/3 of suicide.
Highest level in 40 years, we saw nearly 40,000 Americans died from gun violence. That's not a
2/3 of suicide.
state.
I like the way that they slip up and they say killed, and then they'll slip in and they'll actually speak the truth, which is died, which is true. Died from gun violence. Killed from gun violence and died from gun violence is two different things.
95% of the American people support what we're trying to do here. Close the gun show loophole. Close the private sale loophole. Close the internet loophole. Make sure that
What internet loophole? You guys ever bought a gun from someone on the internet and never had to do anything about it?
Have you not seen Facebook's draconian policies against YouTube's draconian
There are no
policies?
loopholes. It's legal stuff.
You can't even allude to the fact that you're trying to sell something on any of those platforms anymore. So what are you talking about?
that this legislation is excellent legislation.
He's talking about getting reelected.
You notice how the difference between yesterday and today is this guy has not once brought up the idea that, like, we're lucky that they're giving us this one because they don't want semi-autos and they don't want magazines and they don't want handguns. They were talking yesterday, that guy who couldn't keep his hand off his face kept his response to quite a few of the concerns was, you're lucky that we are giving you this, that this is very lenient. What we really wanted and what we're going to be doing next is much worse. And he kept alluding to the next time around it's going to be worse, more encompassing.
Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no.
It's voting right now.
The opinion chair, the ayes have it.
What? Call for a vote.
Mr.
Oh,
Speaker,
really?
From Arizona.
I ask for the yeas and nays to be counted.
Thank you.
Yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will
This tyranny is getting my
rise.
dog all pissed.
Sufficient number having arisen. The yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on ordering the previous question will be followed by a 5-minute vote on adoption of the resolution 145.
And now they've changed it to 145. It used to be HR 8 and HR 1112.
Now it's all one.
Ordering the previous question on resolution 144 and adoption of House Resolution 144 if ordered. This is a 15-minute vote.
All right, now we got 15 minutes to talk shit.
So I've got a question since we got 15 minutes. I've got a question about enforcement. They want to talk about these loopholes. They want to talk about the gun show loophole, and they want to talk about the internet loophole. So both of those are very different, very specific situations.
Hold on, let me play host for a second. First off, let me thank Patreons who allow me the time to be able to do this kind of stuff and to own things like charlestonloophole.com, which I bought as soon as Hillary Clinton said it one time years ago. And I basically don't have much on there right now, but my goal is to have an explanation of why there is no Charleston loophole. And I'm allowed to, or I have the time to do stuff like this, take time in the middle of the day when I'm not ready to. I was supposed to be doing taxes today, but I'm able to jump in and do this thanks to our Patreon. So thank you very much for the people that crowdfund the ability to do this kind of thing. Imagine the power. Well, maybe you haven't thought about the power that your $60 a year can do. People like myself, Ghost, Clover, Night Strike, and others who are individuals trying to do valuable Second Amendment awareness, consider supporting us directly. And I want to thank the people that are supporting me directly to give me the time to do stuff like this. And now I'm going to take my dog out because she has to go peep, and Clover can keep going.
What I was getting at was enforcement on this. So let's take both of these examples that they're throwing out here. And when we're talking about the gun show loophole, how do you enforce that? I mean, we've already seen that the government can't step into the arena of internet. You've got people that gripe about, they need to break up Google and YouTube because of the monopoly and they're infringing on free speech. And the government hasn't been able to step in and do anything about that, which I'm not advocating for, don't get me wrong. But if they're not, and they can't do that, then how are they going to come in and do that with the internet? How can they possibly even enforce something like that? And then the as far as the gun show loophole goes, I can see, okay, when they say gun show loophole, I think what they're talking about in both situations here is when, and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt of being intelligent on this subject, and I don't know that they are, but let's say you do have somebody that is for this bill and they are intelligent and in the know, then you got to think, okay, well, for the internet loophole, they're talking about, somebody puts a site up. You're talking about something like, obviously you can't do it through Gun Broker, you can't do it through Buds or Classic or something like that. All that has to go to an FFL. But you can maybe through some site that's out there that's not regulated, some type of a classified or something like that. Sure, I mean that probably exists. It's the big wide world of the internet. And then you got to think, well, with the gun show loophole, what they're primarily talking about is individual transfers face to face, which you could, going back to the gun show thing, you could require the promoters or whatever to say, that can't happen. I mean, you can't, they just say, hey, you can't bring your guns into sale anymore, or, walk around with them or whatever, some type of monitoring or something at the show. But then, what about in the parking lot? Two guys get to talking, or they go over to one another's house later on after the show. They meet up, or whatever the case may be, because they talked to the show and worked out the trade or the arrangement or whatever it was there. The enforcement is just not possible on either front. It's absolutely, the logistics of it are mind-boggling. There's no way to do it.
All right, so the gun show loophole is private sales. So like you guys said, gun shows are basically swap meets or fairs where people show up and exchange items. And since the FFLs, people with a federal firearms license to sell firearms in the United States, they are only able to do business in their brick and mortar location with one exception. And that exception is a gun show. Gun show is defined in the FFL's, documentation, something like any kind of show that has more than like 4 people that are selling guns or something. So gun shows are necessary. So there's a reason that they say gun shows as opposed to parking lot loophole, or if they want to say internet loophole, they might as well say newspaper classified loophole, because that's what they're talking about. They say internet loophole with intent because they're not idiots, and they go to college and they know how to manipulate, and they know how our side works because we are transparent and we have open communities. We're not done behind private or passworded sites, and we're not all lurking in the depths of the internet. So because they understand our culture and our community and they're not idiots, they say internet loophole because they know that we're going to jump to the conclusion that they mean Bud's Gun Shop or Sportsman's Guide or some valid online source for firearms, which we know need to go to an FFL and then go through a 4473 or a background check. Instead, they're referring to your Craigslist or your local newspaper that has a classifieds that you meet up with someone and sell a lawnmower or a vehicle, or maybe a firearm. So what they're really against is individual private transfer of property. They have to say gun show loophole because it's important to them to get rid of gun shows when they do whatever Clover just suggested and suggests that anybody in a gun show needs to be going through an FFL. What they do is they create an environment at the gun show where it's only businesses that are selling firearms, and that changes the culture of a gun show to where people, they already know that gun shows are suffering. Again, they're not idiots. They know what our playing field is. So they know that the more they weaken and make gun shows unpalatable, they've weakened our community. That's literally our watering hole. It's where we get together and where our politicians get to us. So they need to get rid of gun shows. That's why they use that word specifically. And they use the internet loophole specifically for us, because they know that we're going to react. We're going to get frustrated and fight amongst ourselves and not get to the root, which is what they're trying to get to, which is private sales.
Yeah.
Well, look at this. Look at the voting right now.
I don't.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's right there. The tallies.
I don't have the screen up.
That's interesting.
I don't have the internet right now to be watching anything.
Right.
But the tallies will be weird for
what they're
for a 15-minute vote.
Well, you've got a 15-minute vote. They haven't all voted yet. You got 26 yays and 13 nays, and they're completely party line at this point. So you got 391 who have not yet voted, and there's still 8 minutes. I think we were talking about this. If now they're showing like a bird's eye view from up at wherever the seats are, where you can watch Congress if you want, and it's mostly empty. There's only like 25 people in there at the most, 10 people. Not very many people in there. It's hard to count, but I suspect a bunch of them are proxy votes, or do they vote electronically? We were trying to talk about that last night.
They can vote electronically, but a lot of them will just do a proxy because it's easier to sit there and say, if you're going to vote against down party lines, you can sit there and say, okay, well, I'm going to let the minority leader vote for me because all of our Republicans here are going to vote the same way. So I'll just, whatever the minority leader is going to do, I'll let him proxy my vote as well. So a lot of them is proxy, but they can do electronically. The proxy vote was huge, obviously, back before the electronic age, where they could vote via tablet or whatever. That's how most votes were done, were by proxy. You know,
they probably had like radios or phones or something.
Yeah.
So, Ant is saying, why aren't our pro 2A politicians getting in front of the cameras, organizing rallies, and marching with us? I don't know if we have too many politicians that are their sole position is pro 2A, but I don't know. Are you guys aware of any that have been in the scene and at the rallies and stuff? Actually I can't think of any. Even the people that run for president and stuff, none of them have been.
The problem you're going to have in situations like this is at the middle of the day, and almost every other congressman are on their own committees right now discussing their own bill that are through their committees. So it's just that guy from I think it was Georgia or North Carolina or whatever he said he was from, that he left his committee meeting to come out there and speak. So that's the issue when you start doing this. Until there's an actual vote on the floor, an actual vote, not to close cloture, but to actually vote on it, you're not going to see a whole lot because they're all on their own committees right now.
Everyone else is actually working while they're trying to bum rush.
Well, let's not say they're working.
Well, I realize that I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, and I know it might be misplaced, so I understand. They're busy with other things.
Yeah, you got to realize it's a big world. So, if they're gonna, like Go said, if they're gonna turn over proxy vote, they're dead set against this or for this or whichever side they come down on, and it doesn't matter what anybody says. They're gonna vote the way they're gonna vote. Then why dump something that they're working on just to go over there and make a speech? And sadly, I mean, very few look at the swings in both the House and the Senate. If you look at the swings, it's very, very few people anyway. I mean, you're talking typically less than 10 people willing to swing. No, that's a little racy for daytime TV, but
just a swing. And now, and this is going to piss people off, but I don't particularly care. But understand also that the Second Amendment is a very small piece of dust in the grand scheme of governing. So, like G said, there are probably not very many congressmen out there that whose sole purpose is to defend the Second Amendment. So that's probably why you're not seeing a whole lot of them, because the Second Amendment attacks are a very, very small piece in a grand scheme of governing. So, like I said, you'll see a lot more happening when it actually goes to the floor, and it sounds like it's going to go to the floor to vote tomorrow is what they're saying. So it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow, because what will probably happen is they'll have many more debates tomorrow as well. Because basically all this is to take HR 145 and say, okay, yes, we accept this as an official HR House resolution. And when it goes to the floor to vote, then they still have to do more debate by law. They have to have time for both sides of the aisle or both sides of the opposition or for it to debate on the floor before the actual vote. So this isn't over yet. And probably you'll see more two-way advocates before it goes to vote, I'd imagine.
So we're getting into the last 2 minutes and 45 seconds. We've got 72 tyrants and 59 freedom-loving representatives, and 300 votes yet to go. It should start heating up here, and we haven't seen any Republican yeas and no
61
Democratic yeas.
Almost.
When you buy a gun and do a background check, the gun serial number is sent to the ATF. The phone call is just an FBI check. You should say the serial number is not sent to the ATF. Phone call is just an FBI background check. The ATF keeps your gun serial number. No, they do not. So 762 by 35, whatever that is incorrect. When you buy a firearm at an FFL, your serial number stuff is on the 4473, but that is not phoned into the FBI, and the ATF does not, by rule, take that number unless you have particular circumstances, and then that does happen. So there might be some confusion with circumstances like border states, more than one centerfire rifle, things like that. But for the most part, the 4473 stay in the store. They can be accessed by the ATF anytime, but they're not obligatorily sent to the ATF or anything.
Right.
I think the only time they get the serial number on file, if you will, is if it's used in a crime, lost or stolen, or reported lost or stolen.
ATF has been caught copying the bound book. Yeah, they copy bound books all the time. I don't know if they're caught by that, but they're obviously overseen doing that, and that's their prerogative, from what I understand. They're the regulatory and enforcement agency, so that's why you write that book, so that they can get it and they can take copies of it, from what I understand.
Yeah, and you've got some FFL people out there that do some less than scrupulous things too. So, and you've got honest mistakes that are made as well, and then so there's, in order to keep things in line and monitor that FFL and there would be reasoning for copying those books outside of we're creating a registration.
It said that does keep those serial numbers when the 4473 is sent in, and it's kept on microfilm. No, it's kept on a piece of paper, and whether or not they microfilm it, I don't believe. They want to, I think, but I don't think they're allowed to. But we've done the daily gun show from the cargo containers where the 4473s are. I see what you're saying, because microfilm is not considered digital. That might be, and I've heard, I can't say I know definitively, but all I know is that you're only talking about 4473s that are sent in when an FFL goes out of business, because again, they're not just like every month, they're not sent in. So to suggest though that they're 4473s or the NICS is some sort of serial number registry. It's just not accurate.
And it is not illegal to get a FISA warrant under illegal means, because FISA warrants are kept secret and confidential. The chairman, I want to say the chairman of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court issues the FISA warrants, and they can be done for anything that they want to.
Look at this. It says time remaining, and there's only hundreds of votes in, and there's still 200 no votes. No.
Well, once again, this is not a vote to enact the bill. It's just a vote to accept this as HR 145.
Oh, I thought this was a thing for the bill.
No, that's gonna be. I think they said it's gonna go to the floor for a vote tomorrow. I think that's what I heard earlier. This will be tomorrow.
So I don't
This
know
was just to accept this bill to after the debate.
So you're saying tomorrow they vote on it?
I think that's what I heard earlier. I might be mistaken, but I think that's what I heard, that this will actually go to the floor to vote tomorrow.
Here it is.
The debate.
So right now we're at 145 yay and 111 nay, but they still keep taking votes even though it says time remaining 0.
Yeah.
So anyway, again, this is an effort in paying attention to what they're doing. Of course, that's necessary so we have actual information, but I'm going to encourage people to take this footage and slice it up, take some of the positions they use to justify their position or their view on this, and let's dissect it, give others some valid skepticism and some ways to debate with others. And you never know, when someone learns that they've been duped, they have the potential to get upset about it, right? And a lot of times the people in the middle don't think about this stuff unless it's forced upon them, and if they're fed programming from mainstream media, this is what they're getting programmed potentially. Or maybe they're not. If they're losing, I guess they're not going to. But in any case, if this is something that comes up, be prepared to have an efficient and effective conversation with somebody. And if you create content, you might be creating something that gives someone that key phrase or that perspective that allows them to have an effective discussion with someone. So all of our contributions are valid. Don't be discouraged if your numbers aren't huge. The 2 or 3 people that watch your thing that matter are what it's all about. And I don't know if this thing's ever going to end. It's still saying time remaining 0. We still see votes coming in. Oh, looks like Instagram is over. So we've been going for an hour. 53 people over on Instagram. I don't know again how many of those people are from this country. There's a lot of weird people on Instagram. Let's see.
It looks really split down the middle at the moment. Only difference by about 40 votes.
Yeah, but 100 left. I mean, it sounds like if it's just to make it resolve as HR 145, I'm sure it'll go through. Although the Republicans, I'm glad they're voting against it, except for that one turncoat anti-freedom Republican, or those 2.
Well, there's 2 now.
Republicans.
Well, we know there were 5 co-sponsors.
There's 5 co-sponsors, so those gonna.
The total for yay is 187 for a while. That triggered me, and I felt like they were being aggressive in their number.
So figure 3 more Republicans are going to go turncoat and should really be Democrats in the first place.
That's not necessarily true.
I
know many Democrats that are very pro-gun. I know a lot of Republicans that are not pro-gun.
Well, why did it go down?
Because they were like, let's show Night Strike a thing or two, and they're like, they just flipped right over.
They're not allowed to show me a thing or two. You co-sponsor that bill. You vote for that bill.
No, they're not saying who's voting for yay for it. They might have pushed the wrong button.
They're just doing that to screw with them.
That's right. That's right.
I hope they keep that vote. I hope they keep that vote.
Well, you can change your vote.
Obviously, yeah. Did you notice that those go to the nays, or did they just go back to the no votes?
No, there were 2 yays, and then one of them went back.
Yeah, I couldn't tell.
I
Now
couldn't
there's
tell
none.
either.
Now there's none.
One
But
just flipped to.
it did
One
go
just
up
flipped to
one.
nay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it did go up to 165. So they figured out that this isn't voting for the bill, and they're going to look like assholes if they vote for the.
Well, that's the whole thing is they can go on record and officially say that they voted nay against this. They're not going to say they voted nay against the bill. They're going to say we voted nay against this, and they will have a written or electronic proof to their constituents that they voted nay. But what they're not doing is they're not voting nay against the bill when it actually goes to the floor. They're voting nay in a resolution. But most people don't know that, you know.
There's nothing that can be done now. They only have 197 votes, and it's already 212.
Right. It's over. I mean, it's what it is.
But it's not 2/3 majority though.
I wonder how many of them click yay.
2/3 majority only has to do with a repeal of a veto, though. They don't need 2/3 majority. They need a simple majority.
When I wonder how many of them click yay and then take like an Instagram picture of them voting yes, and then go back and change the vote to nay.
Right.
Then they win both ways. Like they can say, "Well, it's in the record. I voted nay."
That's true.
Instagram, they can
That
be
is
like,
true.
"Oh yeah, look, I voted yes. I hate guns too."
The nays are going up.
Well, it can only go to 197. So
Yeah.
unless a bunch of Democrats say, "Hey, wait a minute, this is tyranny. We can't be part of this."
I don't think that's happening.
That could happen.
I like to see a nay on the Democratic side. That'd be interesting.
So I'm going to throw out there I don't know who said it.
I have the balls for that.
I don't know who said it, but I like the saying that no single cat thinks it's responsible for the flood, and that's the truth. So for all the people that are frustrated because they make an attempt, an email, a phone call, redirecting one of those auto completes like FPC, Firearms Policy Coalition, or GOA, Gun Owners of America, have built in to their websites for us. But people that you don't expect that just because you clicked a button that we're going to see votes happen the way we want. This is a war of attrition. Is that the way to say it? This is a long-term thing. This is the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. The word eternal means all of us and our descendants all the time, constantly keeping track. So get in it for the long run, and don't get too invested to where you get so discouraged when there's a loss that you don't feel like participating again. Take it for what it's worth. Realize that our system has gone through a civil war. It's gone through 2 world wars. It's gone through communism, under multiple attacks through communism, either blatantly or subversively. And we have a system that works. No matter what the scoundrels or assholes that hold a position of representation, they all are ultimately responsible to their constituents. And I don't care how pessimistic you want to be, you can't prove to me that our system isn't unique, and our system hasn't prevailed through many, many attempts to destroy it. So don't expect immediate results. Realize that we're all in it for the long term, and we're all fighting a valid fight. And we can't expect all victories. We need to rile together and appreciate our victories, and continue on through the fight. Also buy things at gearwebsites.com.
It's going to be really interesting to see if it goes straight down party lines with 5 co-sponsors that are Republican. See, there were 6 votes that weren't counted, from the Republicans. So the 5 that co-sponsor probably refused to vote in this, which is
191 to 229, I think they said.
Gee, I think you've got a campaign manager out there that wants you to. I think Mel's wanting you to run for president. I'm sorry, for Congress. My bad.
Okay, now we got the 5-minute vote going. I'm also screen sharing it too, so. Okay, 228 to 192 for of them voting. All right, let's see what happens.
Oh,
this is the actual resolution vote right here.
Vote. This is the vote, right? This is the House voting on it, and they only.
No,
agree.
This is the House resolution. This is the vote that is. They're going to agree on the resolution. This is not to say, hey, we're sending this to Senate. We're not voting on that. This is saying we're agreeing on this resolution. That the wording is exactly. We're agreeing that the wording is there.
Okay, so first they said we're going to call it this, and now they're saying that
we're calling it this
with all the amendments that are accepted.
The first vote was to vote. They voted on if they were going to have a vote to agree on the resolution, which is absolutely asinine. Now this is the actual agreeing vote. So go figure. They have to have a vote to have a vote.
So there's all this stuff is whatever if they're saying whatever out there, but no, I wouldn't be a good politician. I'm not a politician, and I would definitely be better driving around petitioning 2A. So
there actually are 2 Democrats that have voted nay.
Yeah, to the resolution.
That's good because they hopefully it's because they're pro-gun and not because they wish it was stronger, or they can say I'm voted nay because it wasn't enough.
No, that's true.
But I think that is probably something we should start looking at, is taking more of a focus on, we have that stupid NRA thing, how when there's voting, people say what their NRA score is or whatever. Like, who cares? Everybody gets mad at the NRA anyway. Why don't we do more of a grassroots? Everyone pays attention to their reps and then has some sort of a national scoreboard. And, that'd probably be valuable effort, right? To be paying more attention to whoever gets who gets elected to be representative. And then to, have something more focused on 2A principles as they're being voted in. It's a big, big goal. So it takes a couple of steps to get there. Maybe we can work towards that, though. But anyway, I'm too focused on 2A. I could care less about any of the other shit, and so I wouldn't be an effective representative for anybody. I could certainly, I think I know my role though, and I think I'm being effective where I'm at. My NRA rep sees pro-gun control, and the NRA still gives him an A. Or you mean your representative says he's pro-gun control? Tony says he's seen a website somewhere that aggregates votes on legislation so that you can kind of focus in and see who voted for a specific whatever political issue. Yeah, Ohio's bringing up an interesting one. The courts did rule against Firearm Policy Coalition's injunction on the bump stock ruling. So the bump stock ruling will take effect March 24th. So if you own a bump stock, you're a felon on March 24th. There's a injunction going through from Gun Owners of America and from Firearms Policy Coalition. Firearms Policy last night, I think, posted that their injunction was denied. So their injunction was basically a halt to the 24th that said, hey, wait a minute, since this is about to go to court, since we dispute your law, don't make people follow the law right away, because that would be unfair for the people that follow the law, that comply and destroy their property. Is like 3 weeks later, it comes out that this was an unjust law. So they wanted to file an injunction that said anybody who still owns that property on the 24th is not a felon.
Now, let me ask you a question on that, G. Could they not go to another court in another district that might be a little more pro-gun and file another injunction?
Well, I think what happened was FPC filed one and Gun Owners America filed one.
Yeah, they did.
And there's two separate ones. So the FPC's got shot down, but that does not mean the Gun Owners America's was
Yeah,
shot
but I'm saying is, can the FPC refile in another court possibly?
I don't know if the answer is yes or no, but I suspect the answer would also include they already had that set up pre-Christmas when it came through. So they already had that in waiting just in case the result came out that way. And since it came out on the 24th or whatever, in a very unscrupulous way right before the holiday, they already had it written. So if they were to, let's say, even have another one written, is there time before March 24th for it to actually get seen?
And see, and I don't know if you have to have an injunction filed X amount of days before. I don't know. That window ought to be closed. That's why I was asking, because I don't know all of that.
I don't either.
I'll have to go look it up.
Or somebody like that. So it looks like we're looking at the green to propose the resolution is up to 177 on the nays, and it needs, well, they can only get 197 plus 2, so 201. And they've already got 2015 on the yay side, so the tyrants are going to get this one also. People here don't seem to care about this ban. They're buying and selling them as if nothing happened. That's a bunch of hot potato. I would not want to own one for any amount of money, on March 25th, because that's a 10-year federal felony probably.
Yeah, I wouldn't take a chance. That's the thing is, and there's a lot of people out there who says, well, come take it and all that. Isn't the whole thing that we're trying to do is tell everybody that we are law-abiding citizens, and then by publicly saying that you're going to break the law, doesn't that kind of go against everything we're trying to do? It's to show that we are law-abiding citizens. I don't know, just playing devil's advocate.
I guess that depends on where you want to come in with some form of civil disobedience, and if this is that hill you want to die on. That's very true.
I think another way to look at it is, what's your weapon? Is it the thing you hold in your hands, or is it you? And if they think they can, if they think they can take the thing out of your hands and just what am I trying to say? De-weaponize you? Then if you're going to allow that to happen, go for it. I don't need a gun to be to resist tyranny.
That's my point.
Tyranny fears me, not my gun. My gun facilitates it, making it a little bit easier when they've got tanks and shit, but only a little bit easier.
Yeah, that was my point. Is none of us want to see anything regulated, but let's fight fights that are not saying winnable, but let's fight fights that may be more important than a regulation of an accessory. I know that the argument is that could open up regulation to other things, but to sit there and say I'm not going to comply on the bump stock ban because screw them. To me, that's being a hypocrite, saying I'm a law-abiding citizen. So if I'm a law-abiding citizen, then on the 25th of March, I won't own a bump stock. That's what I hear. That's what I would do. Not that I own a bump stock, but and you couldn't prove if I did, But that's the whole point. Is I see a lot of people that will sit there on one side of their mouth say we're just law-abiding citizens, and on the second side, you'll hear them say the next day they're not going to take my bump stock. Well, are you a law-abiding citizen or are you not? And so that's where I think that our community can get in trouble at times.
Yeah, liberals eat that shit up.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I keep trying to move my mouse on this screen, but I see it on the other screen in the screen share. So I'm like, what the hell is wrong with my mouse? And then I'm like, oh, it's like 6 feet. There's 3 feet to my left.
And it's also time delay too. So
let's see. So I don't know how long they're going to go. They definitely won this one.
They'll probably wait until those numbers drop to 0. They're certainly not holding fast to 5 minutes.
And for terribly tactical out there that's calling me a shill ass bitch, you're more than welcome to have a discussion with me anytime you want, brother.
Yeah, I think people come down on a few sides of that, whether he wants to call you names or not. It's some people are going to say that I'm a law-abiding citizen, but when a law is blatantly unconstitutional, I've got no duty to obey it, and yet I still remain a law-abiding citizen.
Yeah.
Playing devil's advocate a little bit here too.
Absolutely. No. That's the whole point of playing devil's advocate is it has a discussion, and that's the whole point is if we're going to have people out here saying that they're law-abiding citizens, and the very next day they're talking about they'll never take my bump stock,
On this
then
vote,
you're an absolute hypocrite.
the nays are 194. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Ugh.
That means you're gonna have another vote.
Yeah, to reconsider the vote that
The
just
unfinished
had.
business is the vote on ordering the previous question on House Resolution 144, on which
Look at how
the yeas
busy
and
they
nays
are. They're
are
so
ordered.
busy.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Calendar number 9, House Resolution 144, resolution providing for consideration of the joint resolution, House Joint Resolution 46, relating to a national emergency declared
Oh,
by
now
the
they're going to
President
quickly
on February
do the national
15,
emergency one.
2019.
The question is on ordering the previous
So
question.
I think, honestly, this is a little piece of tyranny that they've tucked into the corner here for this 5-minute vote. I don't know how many votes we're going to see on this one, but have you guys been paying attention to this one? I forget
Yeah.
what they call it. Something other 28 or something. This is the resistance to Trump's ability as president to call a national emergency for the wall. And what do you guys think of this one?
I don't think it's gonna get to the
Trump's gonna go
Senate.
nice strap.
Okay, yell. Why don't we get the two dudes that yelled, both yell at the same time again? Somebody go first. Al, go first.
Yeah, I think Trump's gonna go nice try, but no cigar.
Okay, nice strike. What do you think?
Well, that's providing they can get it through the Senate. I mean, yeah, they can pass all the bills they want in the House, but if it can't get through the Senate to get to the president, then guess what? It doesn't matter. Just to clarify things.
Well, a lot of it's just political posturing.
Yeah, this is just getting on record as the House is going to say we don't like this, and it's official. We don't like it.
And for a few of them, it's about getting in front of a camera, standing up for their constituents when it comes to re-election. That, hey, see, I was
Looking good
on
on
camera
TV.
talking about this. So that's
Okay,
what that
so let's say Trump is successful, and this is just a little dog yapping at him. And Trump is successful, and he does whatever the hell he does with the concept that it's a national emergency. Is everyone aware that Pelosi has already said that if that happens, the antis are going to use that exact strategy to suggest a national emergency is necessary for an assault weapons ban?
And if they do that, they're going to spark civil disobedience.
No. Assault weapons ban, universal background check is civil disobedience. An assault weapons ban in 2019 or 20, I don't believe is civil disobedience. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's another debate we can have, or anybody can have. That's what this is all about, is watching our representatives do their thing so that we can be transparent about it and chat a little bit while it's happening. But ideally, people take some of the kernels from this or the topics and have further discussions because it's valuable. There's a lot of stuff happening today. This is what it's all about, right? I at least create platforms online to foster this kind of communication so that we as individuals can use the democratized technology that's available to us to have actual conversations without filters and without censor. And this is what Franklin and Jefferson and the others envisioned, as well as the ability to arm ourselves, is the ability to educate ourselves and communicate and have what, is the evolution of what created this country. So this is just the essence, this is the knife edge going through the actual meat right now. But there's lots more work. We need to slice these things up into steaks, cook them and enjoy them, and then process that, get stronger, and go back and be ready for the next hunt. I don't know if that's the best analogy or not, but this is only one piece. This is not entertainment. If you're here to be entertained, get the fuck out. Get out. Get here to be encouraged to participate. Get here to get what's the word? Energized and get some ideas and go do something.
This is one of those. This question that they're voting on right now is one of the ones I find interesting because we're strictly following along party lines, and you can't tell me for 1 second that every Democrat believes that Trump is 100% wrong, and every Republican believes that he's 100% right in this national emergency declaration. I'm not buying it. It's all party. This is all partisan posturing.
I would think they, as representatives and entities in the Congress, part of our government, would not allow this, no matter what the party says, to allow a change in the balance of powers.
Which is exactly why my position isn't very popular among a lot of conservatives.
So Matt Sexy just got here. I'm gonna take a second and play host. So right now we're watching 2 chat rooms and a little video over there on the side, which is the bird's eye view of the House of Representatives. Right now they're voting on a House Resolution 144, which is the opposition to the Trump's national emergency to build the wall. And this was only like a 3 or 5 minute vote at the end of HR 8 and HR 1112, which were combined into HR
145.
145, and then voted to not have, they voted on it to change the name to 145 to take it to the rest of the House, and then further they voted to take no more alterations to it or whatever. And then amendments to it, thanks. And then now they're voting on this third one. So we've been watching, I don't know, an hour or something maybe. For a lot of it, we've just been chatting like this. On the screen, you see the Congress over there, or the House of Representatives at least, a couple of different views as they play this on YouTube. Then we're watching the YouTube chat of the House of Representatives. And if I can figure out which one this is, we can go see, I guess it's this beta thing. No, is it? I don't know where it is. No, I don't know where it is. But we don't know how many people are. Night Strike, can you tell how many people are watching that on YouTube? But whatever it is, we're watching their feed. That's the one that's really jumping over here on the left. It just said bacon and eggs.
The one on ours is about 80.
No.
What's the one on the other one? Do you have the link to that?
No, that's what I was just asking you. So anyway,
that's House Rules, right?
Yeah. So we've got the YouTube channel from the House of Representatives chat room on the left there, and then on the right side we've got the chat room from our YouTube video where we're simulcasting this whole thing live. Then we're of course running it over on gunchannels.com, or we're simulcasting it over on gunchannels.com, which is a community that's going on 6 years old, which is just a bunch of people that like to talk about guns, are interested in advocacy and information, and get together. And we've got people joining us in this chat. So I opened it up to our Patreons who make it possible for me to take the time to do stuff like this. And then we had a link out on Gun Channels, so people jumped in. We got Al jumping in from Texas. We got Clover Tech also jumping in from Texas. Ghost Tactical jumped in from Arkansas. Jim, where are you at?
I'm in Texas too.
Oh, so many Texans. And then we got Mel, who is in Ohio?
Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, Mel, okay, good. Wisconsin, and then Night Strike in South Carolina, who's responsible for most of this. And then I'm in Missouri.
You're welcome. But no, I can't find the House Rules channel. Did it get struck?
No, I just went to YouTube and went to House Rules. It's just that I don't know how do I get it back from here? I just tapped the chat, so I don't know.
Right click on the main portion and do view info or something, and it'll give you a link.
How about I don't care? There's some amount of people watching it on YouTube, and then we're watching it simulcast.
I know on the Time channel, Time Magazine channel, about 5,000 people are watching it over there.
Really, 5,000? That's pretty fucking awesome. I'm impressed. That's pretty good. Because you guys remember when Trump was even doing his stuff? Like Trump's things only got like.
And here's the funny thing: the comments over there are the same exact ones you're seeing on our chat, are the same exact ones you're seeing on the chat on House Rules. It's all either, they're either pro wall or they're pro freedom. Some aren't for the wall, but a majority of it is, freedom lovers. So what the hell?
What else would they be?
I don't know. Anti-freedom lovers?
No, never mind.
Un-American? I don't know. Ghost. Devil's advocate all you want. I don't know what to call them.
I'm just messing with you, man. I just like getting you riled up. Doesn't take much.
It's only a little infringement.
You stop that.
Both the yeas are 228, the nays are 193. The previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes.
The ayes didn't even say anything.
So RN said if every firearm owner actually showed up to a protest, they would hear us, but FUD say we got to work. So I'm going to take objection to that one because I know we got King FUD in here right now. But I don't really think it is FUDs that say that because I hear all kinds of 2A advocates say that and just regular people. Obviously, there's people that have to work, but there's lots of people that are just around watching TV. So what can we come up with as a better derogatory word for people that are just 2A?
Shy?
2A apathetic. 2 apathetic instead of 2A? 2A and then pathetic or something? 2A pathetic? That kind of works. They're like,
kind of works.
How about just pathetic? I mean,
well, because they're pathetic for 2A, so maybe that's the way to do it. And then they're apathetic and they're 2A pathetic. I don't know, but there's got to be something we come up with for the people that are all shout and no teeth or whatever that is for little puppies. All bark and no bite. There you go.
Yeah. I think the dog didn't like that term though.
There's a lot of kitten people out there, but we are willing to work in harmony with them.
I like cats and I like dogs.
2A delegators. I like that. Gun owners in name only.
Ganos.
Ganos.
Rhinos. There you go.
Go no. Gun owner name only. Go nos.
Go nos.
That's an easy way to say it. And then it's not like a drug, we're not making fun of any body part or anything or any kind of doctor.
Go nose.
Go nose. I kind of like that one. Maybe
I silent.
Something right here. Another way to divide ourselves. Right on. Now we're cooking.
I don't want to divide us even further. I want to unite. We need unison.
Unicinity. Night Strike's all about the unicinity.
Yeah, I'm all about the unicinity and the synergy and all that.
Unicinicism.
Wow.
Wow.
Thanks for taking me back down to reality, G.
United in cynicism. We all get together and talk about how it'll never work.
Oh my God. That's awful.
We will be covering it and live streaming it on the channel. What channel? I'm marching the Capitol Springfield on Wednesday. Springfield.
Illinois.
Oh, Illinois on Wednesday. Got it. iGold. Yeah, that's That's March 27th. It's the day after everyone becomes felons for owning bump stocks. But iGold is Illinois Gun Owners OLD. So Illinois Gun Owners Day or something like that. And it's where the representatives in Illinois encourage the firearms owners to show up and represent and petition their positions to them. And I assume they listen. Minnesota just had a pretty decent rally. Awesome turnout. Roosted posted that live. Bad sound, so you can go watch it over on Minnesota's. I'll have to go look on Instagram. I forgot what they call themselves, but there's a Minnesota group that posted some pretty decent clips. What other? Since we're waiting for these stupid votes on what is it called, parliamentary policy or whatever? Does anybody else know of any 2A rallies coming up? Maybe I should check out Hickok's channel. He'll have a list of those, right?
Sure.
You can also
I will say this: have you guys seen Eric's channel this morning? Him and Chad did a nice video on HR8 and HR 1112 or whatever you want to call it. But they at least did something, so I was happy to see that.
Maybe there's some of that 5,000 people watching over on the YouTube or whatever, then, or on the Time or something, or from that. But
yeah, and maybe Coleon Noir did a video too.
I'm sure Coleon is doing a video eventually.
Yeah, right.
What's this? Oh, give him the bird? Is that what that is? Like, what's that guy doing to that chicken?
You'd have to ask Gizzard Gary.
Speaking from experience, it is hard on those who live check to check to go to rallies, but those who can't do that can still do their part. Educate those around them, write and call reps. Oh, for sure, man. I just gonna keep putting it out there that I don't know. I'm not speaking to any individual, but just putting it out there that people spend time going to sports all the time. I continue to see people tailgate and follow teams or whatever. People do that for like weddings and family things. You'll travel, so we have travel in our budgets for things, and I don't know, people vacation, just a vacation or whatever. So I understand that it's not easy to do anything, but it's all about priorities. And it's because it's a deliberate choice. So for so many people, that's why it's so, that's why the people that show up at those rallies have such significance, right? They know that the politicians, the policy strategists, they know what it takes to get to a rally. When they see a bunch of Rolls Royces show up and people get out and sit on, fancy chairs and have it catered a fare, that's different than a whole bunch of regular people showing up in a parking lot full of regular vehicles like we had in Phoenix. And it was 350 people that showed up. I've been saying 250, but the actual count was 350 regular people did like I did and drove 2 hours there to hang out for 2 hours and then drove 2 hours home. I certainly don't have money to spare. I'm only able to do that because of Patreon. And, that's 350 people in similar circumstances that took time and didn't do something else that could be productive or that could be time with their family. And instead, valued that participation and that presence and what that presence signifies, right? So I'm not bitching at anybody, man, but I'm just saying it's critically important that we show up and show unity. They're trying right now. They're literally voting on taking the gun show, the concept of a free market get together where people of similar mindset exchange property and ideas and communicate. They're taking that away from us. They're literally making that concept illegal, something that's so important that it was put into the infringements of 1968 when they created the bureaucracy that started to the jackboot on our necks. So they realized the significance of that and they left provisions for it in the laws. That's significant. And right now they're crushing those what they're calling loopholes, which were the compromises to gun owners back then. And they changed society, they changed the perception of firearms, so now they can crush these last remaining pipelines that we have to get words out. So your participation in these online pipelines are more and more vital. Chicken pepper bacon, what's that all about? What's Knife's doing over there?
I just want to say that I'm offended by Mad Sexy's suggestion of what he wants to do to that poor chicken. I think there needs to be a resolution and a vote to amend his meme and his.
I second that.
You got 229 Democrats who are in favor of censorship. Oh, see, I'm trying to scroll on the wrong screen again. I don't figure out what you're talking about. Yeah, exactly. What's going on with that chicken over there?
That poor chicken.
Poor Gary. He's just trying to keep a nuclear reactor going. Showing all them buttons and knobs or whatever, keeping the steam kept in the right place and the electricity blowing out.
And they're trying to infringe him.
And Mad Sexy wants to give him a colonoscopy right there live on
Right
a chat.
there.
Agreeing to the resolution. So I don't know. Do we think that it's gonna just end with? I guess it'll have to end because they'll go on to the next thing, right? Like these people go to lunch or something.
They'll probably take a recess for about an hour after this is over.
This vote, the yeas are 229.
Fish is saying F Democrats and gun grabbers. Well, how about F gun grabbers? I don't care what party they're from.
Motion to reconsider, laid on the table. Chair lays before the House of Communications.
The Honorable Speaker, House of Representatives, Madam, due to a clerical error outside of our office, I have been mistakenly added to the House Veterans Affairs Committee roster. I am submitting this statement to remedy this error. I hereby resign from the House Veterans Affairs Committee. Signed sincerely, Andy Levin.
Are they onto something else?
Without
now?
objection, the resignation is accepted. For what
Yeah,
purpose?
they're just doing a little laundry right now.
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Democratic Caucus, I offer a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration. The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 148. Resolved that the following named members be and are hereby
Sir, I ask
elected to the
unanimous
following
consent.
standing committees of the House of
Mr.
Representatives.
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be considered as read and printed in the record. Without objection, the resolution is agreed to, and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Is this over, or is this something different, or what's going on?
He's introducing a new bill.
Chair lays before the House of Communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, Madam. Under Clause 2G of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of Representatives, I herewith designate Ms. Gloria Lett, Deputy Clerk, Mr. Robert Reeves, Deputy Clerk, and Lloyd Horwich, Legal Counsel, to sign any and all papers and do all other acts for me under the name of the Clerk of the House, which they would be authorized to do by virtue of this designation, except such as are provided by statute in the case of my temporary absence or disability.
This guy's going on vacation and is delegating his deputies to sign paperwork for him. That's what the Congress is all about, is wasting time.
Well, they have to do all this stuff.
Yeah, but they don't have to read it in public. They can just submit it, you know.
Well, I'm sure there's some parliamentary thing.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. But it's just, this guy's basically telling Congress that he's going on vacation and his assistants can be able to sign any paperwork for him. Gotta love it.
How come? Oh, I'm scrolling on the wrong screen again. Here we go. So 1 minute speeches, which blah, 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 speaker approval, prayer, reconvene, returning a recess. Oh no, this was what happened already. So motion to reconsider laid on table, agreed to without agreeing the resolution. So I think 145 is over. 144 is done.
145 is over, and if Pink is right, and I had to jump out for part of this. It looks like we've basically combined HR 8 and HR 1112 into one thing.
That's correct. Yeah, it's 145 now.
Exactly. So that way they can fold up. And wait, I guess it isn't with 144. So 144 is separate. The complaint.
Yeah, that's the national emergency.
State of emergency.
Thing.
Yeah.
So 145 is just in there, and then I guess it's just, how do we know what's next or whatever?
They voted to accept it as a bill, so it will. Like I said earlier, when they were having the 1 hour debate, they were talking about tomorrow being the vote. So it sounds, if I heard that correctly, I think they're going to be voting on this tomorrow.
So tomorrow.
I'll have to go back and listen to the debate, but I believe I heard tomorrow.
Okay. Well, then at that point, I'm going to wrap it up. this kind of happened out of the blue. Thanks, Ghost, for seeing that it was going on live, and I immediately jumped on and posted this. Posted a link over on Gun Channels to simulcast it, and also a link for people to join in. Posted a link over on our Patreon so that those people who support what we're doing here could join in and participate. I guess I don't need to keep screen sharing, so I'll close that down. And thanks to the people that showed up to participate on the Gun Channel side and over on the YouTube side. It's been interesting, and had a little bit of discussion there in the times when they were doing their votes and stuff. Thanks to the people that joined in, to be in the conversation. I certainly don't like being in these things by myself, so having other people to chat with and getting different points of view is what it's all about. And again, thanks everybody for showing up and participating live. We have 66 people here still now. You guys that have wrenches, I encourage you to throw links out there. Ghost does content on a regular basis. Clover is doing content all the time. Night Strike does content, but he also built a video hosting platform that's Pro 2A. So if you're sick of being on a platform that hates your property, that hates the laws that we have, that encourages this kind of tyrannous bullshit, then consider putting your videos on a platform that actually values your participation in our Second Amendment. And thanks to Night Strike for continuing with guntube.org, even though it's not a slam win. It isn't like a financial success for you. I appreciate your continuing to put in the persistence to keep it going. And for everybody out there, thanks for being an active part of 2A advocacy.